Good morning. Welcome to another live feed on Rashad Mitchell's YouTube channel. Let's get into it, man. When the game was war, the NBA's greatest season, 1987, 1988 NBA season. Was this the greatest season of all time? According to this author, Rich Cohen, he felt that this season was the greatest of all time. He felt that this was the greatest season ever because of the amount of great players that was in the league at the time. And they were in their prime. They're in their mid-20s, early 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, all the way to Kareem, who was like the elder statesman at that time. But that year was a great year. So we're gonna start with the players. The flightless Bird. Bird was the oldest. He was born in 1956, 3 years before Magic, 5 ahead of Isaiah. He was half a generation older than Michael, who was in high school when Larry broke in the NBA in 1979. Bird began as a kind of a rumor. There were whispers of a hoop shooting hit in the Indiana Shrub, southern part of the state, down where the clan was still strong. It was said he was beating college teams single-handed, playing in a way no white player had played since Cousy had a decade before. In 1977, Red Auerbach, president of the Celtics, sent Casey Jones, an assistant coach who anchored the 1960s Boston Dynasty, west to investigate. He was skeptical when he left, while Glory returned. Jones said, I told Red that Bird was the most confident athlete I ever seen in my life in any sport anywhere. Picture this: the Indiana State team was playing, I think it was Southern Methodist. Larry is being doubled and triple teamed every time he touches the ball. He gets away on a fast break, but there are two guys hanging on him as he goes down court. Larry fires the ball off the backboard at an angle, simultaneously zigging away from the two defenders. They think he's just thrown up a crazy shot. But Larry goes right to where he knows the ball will come off the board in the air. He takes the pass he just made to himself and dunks. I had never seen anybody have the presence of mind, self-confidence, and ability to put something like that together. Bird was an Indiana dream personified, a character out of the movie Hoosiers, the raw talent hitting jump shot after jump shot on a court behind his mother's house in French Lick. Metal pole shaking, ragged net sign. Hayfields rolling away. French Lick was a faded resort, a blink and miss it, but hot spring beside Highway 56. It was a small high school, a dilapidated hotel, piano factory. There were no elite summer camps for Larry Bird, no personal trainers, no showcases like politics, sports in such a town as local. Kids do not play in mesh uniforms. They play in jeans, shirts, or skins. Larry's father did not help. He could either hold a job or pay the rent. If not employed at the piano factory, he was looking for work or drinking. Joe Bird fought in the Korean War, an experience that unhinged him. He was restless when he returned, prone to mood swings, bad decisions. Larry's mother filed for divorce. Joe became an untethered balloon drifting in the blue sky. He told his kids they'd be better off without him. After one afternoon, he called the house and told his wife that he planned to do. He shot himself that day. Larry Bird got into a lot of fights growing up. You could see it later in the way he went after opposing players in the NBA. The look in his eyes was for real. If not fighting for himself, he fought for his brothers. It was the code he learned from his father. Protect your family. My father told us all to watch out for one another, no matter what the circumstance. He told us that if he ever heard we didn't stick up for one another, we shouldn't bother coming home. Larry grew a foot between his junior and senior years of high school. He didn't stop growing until he really did look like a bird, a crane, a long, spindly legs, the tangled, dirty blonde hair, the beak of a nose. Asked if Larry was strong. Ruby said, not weight room strong, then what? Cock strong, a term of high praise in southern Indiana, meaning when naturally powerful, Herculean without resorting to the weight room. Larry said he was better off at softball than at basketball. Slow pitch beyond beneath the arc lights. He played in the beer league with his brothers and a ranging center fielder with hitting power. He could drive the ball 300 feet into the gloaming. He said he was even better at badminton than at softball, but it was basketball court he loved. That's where the world made strengths to him. But the variables became manageable. Never, especially player Bird relied on his uncanny sense of the game, his instincts. You don't have to be a superhuman athlete if you know what will happen next. He was such a quiet rebounder. Jan Volk told the general manager of the Celtics at the time. He would prepare for rebounds in ways that didn't even draw any attention. He just drifted over to the spot without being noticed. Was usually there waiting when the game delivered the ball into his hands, like in visually possible situations at the court where they happened. That's how I came up with steals in the closing seconds. For the moment, some golfers say they visualize everything about a shot before they take it. That's how I feel about playing defense. He's never seen a pro ball before he played in one. He learned about the NBA and its history the way he learned about everything else from the older kids in French Lick. Bird all around found the best competition on the court beyond the French Lick Spring Hotel where a group of employees, all black, at a regular game. He bluffed in his way in, then studied the action like a student. This was different than a game played at the high school. It was quicker, it was open and free, built around unexpected places, passes, slashing moves to the hoop. He knew he was feeling seeing the game as it was meant to be played. I always thought basketball was a black man's game. I just tried to do everything I could to fit in. Larry Bird, also, there was games that he played that Bird learned the trash talk. Larry dominated in high school. He was a classic case of a man against boys. It seemed like he broke up town off district record every other week. There was one night when I had a game going. I had 30 something points in the first half, and people were thinking I was going to break the Orange County record. My dad was at home. He didn't go to many games, but my uncle called me and asked after and said, "You better get down here. Your boy's going to do it tonight." We didn't have no car, but he walked over. I ended up 54 points, 20, 38 rebounds. The fact that Bird played at a tiny school in a rural area that Baron Wills allows Indiana kept most of the big-time college scouts away. He dismissed him at a distance, calling his competition weak. His fundamentals awful, his movements looked awful on film. All I ever heard as I've been playing was about everything I wasn't or everything I couldn't do. It was always, he's from a small town. He can't run, can't jump, he can't play against bigger guys. He steps slow, he can't play defense. Bird also said to be sensitive and stubborn, a bit of a head case. He went to a real small school and wasn't Mr. Basketball, anything. Jerry Stishny told the author, but he was good enough to get invited to the high school all-star series they had every year in the University of Kentucky. The coach didn't start him and didn't use him. When he finally tried to put him in at the end, Bird refused to play. That's when he got the bad rap. Indiana University coach Bobby Knight offered Bird a scholarship, in just in case he turned out to be a player. You got to sit Bird on the bench, and Bloomstead then become a star somewhere else. But Larry left bench lit with fanfare for an Indiana kid. There was nothing bigger than playing for Bobby Knight. Bird floundered at Indiana, the sprawling campus, all those classrooms, all those seats, all those kids, that it was too big for him. He did not play varsity, so he wallowed one of a dozen scholarship nobodies. He was hazed. It was every newbie by the scribes of upperclassmen, particularly Kent Benson, on whom Bird will revenge himself in the pros. This is upbringing, man. Coming through, in college, obviously with Indiana State, he scored 43 points, 15 assists, 25 rebounds by the fall. He was bound for Torrey Hope. So when he came to Indiana his first year, Bird could practice but not play. That was the D1 rule for transfers at the time, and the Sycamores went 13-12, and Bird watched. Next year, Bird was in line with the same team, went 25-3. Magazine sent reporters. Fans lined up for tickets. Bird averaged 32.8 points a game. But it wasn't just the points that made him famous. It was the style, how he played, icy calm. The passes to teammates who didn't know they were open. By his second season at Terry Hope, he became a top NBA prospect. If he plays like that as a Sycamore, imagine what he'll do if he put real talent around him. NBA executives, most of them stopped scouting Bird when he said he returned to college for his senior year. Common wisdom. Drafting the kid who wasn't ready to go pro is like giving up a season before it starts. But that's not how Red Auerbach saw it. So Auerbach, Larry Bird, you had to wait for look like an undervalued commodity. Also had the 6th overall pick in the 1978 draft. The people tune in right now. But everybody saw no one with the sort of generational talent he could rebuild around. A notorious bit of a draft brilliance, Auerbach used his first round pick on Bird, a player who said he would not go pro for another year. I knew Bird would go 1 or 2 in the draft next season, Auerbach explained, but I also knew I wasn't planning to have the best record in the league. This was my only shot at him, and I was thinking long term. We weren't going to win anything next season anyway, but here was someone I thought could help us win in the future. It was an executive's equivalent of a no-look pass. I wasn't paying attention to the next series draft. I was out playing golf in Santa Claus, Indiana, when a man came up to me on the one fairways and told me so was like take me six in the draft. I said, what's that mean? He said, I don't know. Watch the leaving news. Bird returned for his senior year at Indiana State, determined to make a run at the national title. Sycamore is a collection of big country kids who soon returned to their family farms. Not a single player from that team. Elizabeth Bird made a career in the NBA, defeated several college powerhouses like Purdue, Creighton, New Mexico, brought to a brilliant, perfect record. Meanwhile, brilliant, charismatic, generational talent, point guard trapped in the body of a power forward was watching closely. From a distance, Magic Johnson would have turned the Michigan State Spartans into a powerhouse. Check the newspaper each morning to see how Bird had done against NC State, against Bradley, against Wichita. Magic had, in fact, played with Bird All-Star game. Kicked on the floor. Magic had followed Bird ever since. He was like no white player I ever seen. Magic explained it wasn't only his talent, it was his attitude when you were on the court with him. He gave off that you can't touch me or the fact that he talked trash, that he really did talk trash, even more surprising. That's playground stuff. Blacks were used to hearing it from a white guy. It used to bother some black players that wanted, is he talking that stuff to me? But Larry backed it up after night. So 1979 tournament, Sycamore was placed to the early rounds. Smash led his team through the opposite bracket, working his way toward his first showdown. The Michigan State beat Penn to reach the final. The entire Michigan State team, included several NBA players, gathered in the stands to watch Indiana State play the Paul in the semifinal. The Blue Demons had several standouts, including Mark McGuire, who was in the process of rewriting NCAA record book. The Sycamores had Bird, arguing with teammates a dozen men in Michigan State jackets, most of whom believed DePaul would win easily. Magic said, "You don't know my boy Larry. Don't underestimate Larry." Bird took control in the first half, hit jumpers, battled for rebounds, dunked, scored 35 points. Indiana State won by two. Then the next 79 NCAA final was played in Salt Lake City, Utah. Storm said it was this game in which Bird and Magic went head to head for a national honors that marked the birth of the modern NBA. The team league had been struggling. There were few transcendent stars, few great teams. The pro game had become plodding, violent, and slow. There was too much off the court news, players arrested for gun possession, drug possession, assault. Attendance was down, as were revenues. Many games were not even carried on live TV. Then here came Bird and Johnson, sharp and sober, and wildly talented prodigies who seemed to be playing for the love of the game, purity. There was also the perfect contrast of matchup. The city, Lansing, Michigan versus the farm, Terry Hope, Indiana, black versus white. Vegetables versus well, not substance because Magic had plenty of substance, but the old hustling, sweaty American way of getting a dirty job done. Independent by Bird versus what looked like effortless magic. Bird had already been drafted by the Celtics. Johnson would be drafted overall in 1979, meaning that the NCAA final marked the beginning, not the end of the rivalry. Bird and the Magic and Larry crossed paths in the tunnel before the game. Reaching a hand out to Larry, Magic said, "Yo, Bird." Larry left Magic hanging, turned and walked away. Magic could be friends with no opponent. Magic could be friends with an opponent, not Bird. Irvin's an outgoing guy. Bird said later, he's got this big smile. He's loved everybody. If I fought me, when you compete, you're really not friends. You need to keep the edge. I never let myself forget. My goal was to take three of them teeth home with me. The fun was not especially close. Spartans came with a simple strategy, executed perfectly. As soon as Bird had the ball in hands, two or three Spartans swung, bumped, spotted, fouled, and in case of a player breaks such a trap by getting the ball to teammates, they were open all over the floor, letting them score easy baskets while occupying the defense. But Bird did not have the kind of teammates at Indiana State who could beat any of the Spartans one-on-one. Magic Johnson scored 24 points that night, but two of his teammates, Sam Vincent and Greg Helpser, both headed for the NBA, also scored double figures. Bird got 19 points, but had to do it with crazy off-balance shots. Magic 175, Michigan State 175-64. It was a lesson for Bird and Magic. No matter how good any single player can be, stop. To go all the way, a team needs many sources of offense. Spartans raced to the center court when the buzzer sounded. Celebrated, then cut down the nets. Magic looked at the Indiana State bench. Never forget what I saw. While half the arena was screaming in joy, like Brooke says, with his face burned and tired. So he crying, and my heart went out to him. Bird was asked by Red Auerbach to fly to Boston and finish the 1978 season. With the Celtics, he would have been the first man to play in college. Maybe in the same season, Bird demurred. He wanted to return to Terry Hope with his teammates, wanted lost, finished school, graduate. When he did turn up at the Celtics facility for rookie camp at the end of the summer, had the beverage for them. These early practices were optional for waiting. Going to the newspapers, Auerbach had agreed to pay Bird over $600,000, the most ever paid to a rookie, which imitates both the veteran Celtic veterans like Cedric Maxwell, who came to camp to Bird school Bird. Bird played forward with a handful of different partners that week. He was gangly, tall, stooped, hands on hips, blonde fuzz springing from ruddy cheeks. He had the face of a pioneer or a frontiersman. The hate from French Lick, he gave himself that name at the Prince Conference. Cedric Maxwell, 24, going to his third season, joined times while mental health caused an effort to embarrass Bird. The resulting scrimmages were fast and physical. Everyone took a run at the rookie, lots of under pressure. Maxwell pushed him farther and farther aside. But no matter how distant, no matter how hard he'd been jostled, Bird made the shot. After a week of camp, my opinion for these changed. There was no denying what kid could really play. It was Bird's passing that impressed veterans the most. He was a big forward who moved the ball like a guard. He seemed to know where you were going to before you knew yourself. Even as a rookie, Bird did that thing an athlete must do to be considered great, made his teammates look better than they really were. Most college stars struggle when they enter the NBA, and for the first time, many are facing opponents who can run just as fast, jump just as high, shoot just as accurately as them. Maybe for the first time, they are not the best players on the floor, with an exception. It's actually better as a pro than he'd been in college. The better the opposition, the better he performed. He was big, physical under the hoop, a style that suited the franchise perfectly. John Havlicek told the Boston Globe at the time, I never would have retired if I had known there was a chance to play with someone like Bird. The Celtics were predicted to finish at the bottom of their division next 9-80. Bird's first year, they go on 29-53. Previous season, they failed to make the playoffs, so the best player center, Dave Campbell's a broken down old man of 31 in 9. This also would be the sad Celtics season for the once great Bob McAdoo, who was overweight, not missing present in 79. Some Celtics fans called him McAdoo, the Macadont. The team had hired a new coach, a disciplinarian named Bill Fitch, a few weeks before the season opener. Fitch handed Bird a piece of paper and asked him down how many games he thought the Celtics would win. Bird thought a moment, then scribbled a number. Fitch looked at his sticker, 47. He said graciously, "That's all we got from 29 to 47. You must really think something's going to happen around here." The Celtics win and finished the season at 61-21. First place in the Eastern Conference. I'm still waiting for Coach Fitch to come back on that one, Bird said later. For many rookies, the schedule is a bigger adjustment than the game. All that traveling, all those arenas, all those heckling fans, many of them drunk all the pros' hotels. NBA teams traveled commercial back then. Night games usually ended at the last flight out. Early league rules, teams had to take the first flight to the next city in the morning, which meant at 5 a.m. jump to D.C., Philly, Detroit. While the GM's coaches were drinking Bloody Marys in first class, players was trying to get comfortable and coach. Tall men crammed in small seats, wet suits, neck pillows, the flight attendant navigating the drink cart beyond around the around the Cape Horn. Bird loved it. He playing on the road in the NBA meant having to think about only one thing, basketball. The rest of it, the confusion and hassle of everyday life vanished. First 3 months or so of the season with me, I was just traveling and playing. I didn't have to worry about anything else. The Celtics made to the semifinals in Bird's rookie year, then lost in 5 games to Philadelphia. Sixers were the class of the NBA, a powerful team flush with talent, led by Dr. J, Doug Collins, Darryl Dawkins, Bo Cheeks. To understand why Boston played the way they did in the 1980s, you have to look at those 76ers. You need a steamroller to get by Philly. So that's what Auerbach built, a steamroller. Bird had merely been the first piece. Bird won Rookie of the Year in 1979, finished high in the MVP voting. Astonishingly so for a first-year player. finishing averaging 21.3 points a game. Was outstanding player of 1 year. He returned the Celtics to the center of basketball conversation. And yet he was not happy until he eventually lost to Magic Johnson. He never really feel like he accomplished anything. Magic was everything Bird was not. Athletic, extroverted, affectionate, press friendly. So always seemed to be having a blast. Larry was a white kid in a black man's game who, before anything else, wanted to prove he belonged. Magic was transcended, revolutionary talent. Don't get me wrong, Bird wanted to dominate, but always within the existing structure of the game at one but known position on the floor. Magic was a black kid playing a black game. Wanted more than that. It was not even to enough. It was not enough to simply excel. He wanted to change the game as he played it. He wrote the code from within the matrix. For him, point guards tend to be small, stick operators like Kuzi. Magic was different because he'd been relatively short in grade school when this was first signed, but his early coaches put him in point guard because he was small. It was a small guard that he mastered. Six little men used to outwit giants, dribbling, ball handling, and feinting movement. Then he grew 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". He reached 6'8". Coaches began asking him to play four, but refused. He had his position, loved it, it would not change. He liked carrying the ball and he's setting the tempo. The result was a phenomenon new to the game, the skills and mindset of a point guard and the body of a power forward. It was also half a foot or more taller than the player tasked defending him. This helped explain his court vision. He could usually see over the defender's head. He could take it in. Every player, every open lane had a glance. See, it was that vision that made Magic into Mozart. Definitely who played with Magic on the Lakers. So Lamp was a star at the University of Virginia. There was his leadership, of course. He was the greatest leader I've ever been around. He could run like the wind, shoot like the lights out. It was his vision that set him apart. I've never seen anybody else with that kind of vision. He used it to control the game. He was a guy who could dominate without scoring a single point. So I don't know, Michigan, childhood of Magic, system playgrounds, such where he lived, stuff like that. This is background. I'm getting to all that. His background for the high school win. He got the nickname Magic. The nickname, and then where he's going to play ball. I was at the Michigan State championship. And 2003 season, state high school championship in Michigan and NCAA championship. He was ready for the big time. He seemed like to go number one in the draft, which either could have been the Bulls or the Lakers. Bulls because they were offered the Lakers because they tried to trade it up. Home types will decide pick first. It was Bills, Jerry Rogers, Rod Thorne, picking against Los Angeles, Jerry Magic, Jerry West. One called heads, it was tails. So instead of heading across Lake Michigan, to Chicago, Magic went across the country to Los Angeles, where he played for the team Jerry West had built around Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It seemed like another piece of the bad luck for the Bulls. But by losing that loss, remaining awful, they get a shot at an even better player a few years later. The likes from Jerry West, Lakers owner Jackie Cook planned to draft Sidney Moncrief, Sid the Squid, a shooting guard who broke in collegiate records at the University of Arkansas. But Kent Cook was in the process of selling Lakers to Jerry Buss, a cowboy boot wearing and influential entrepreneur from Wyoming. He yielded when Buss made it clear he wanted Magic. As with Bird and Boston, every Laker veteran turned out before his but the option of summer camp to meet the rookie. they found himself, Magic found himself with, found himself on the court floor with players who were not only better than he to ever play with, to make some Cooper Curry or Jabbar, but entirely familiar with his style, unfamiliar with his style. Those first no look passes caught, that's why spots they'd be racing down the floor, roll up glove, then turn, so that there was a ball. Magic's passes hit them in the face. Stuff like that. Magic was probably tested by Drew Tate some with just with celebrity, his contract, to pay the big tooth grin, stuff like that. Yeah, the nickname Booker. This either denoted his manner, those with long legs and wide eyes. He looked like a Gavilan Jim deer, or his other person at nighttime urban. Because when everywhere in love, everything, sometimes 2 or 3 at night at time. Stuff like that. Each rookie was assigned a mentor, a veteran to shadow, learn from it, and in case be hazed by. Some veterans humiliate the charge, made them sing in the locker room, watch their cars go to the store for condoms and wine. You who been given charge of the urban junior required only 2 things. Every morning on the road, Magic was to bring cream and cover of the New York Times, and her examiner at every practice he was to fetch his Gatorade. So rookie year that you have to deal with. Playing with Kareem. First game was in Seattle on October 12th, 1979. He led the offense, made coach passes, found like a big man, dribbled like a small man, scored from the inside outside. High five first bump, looked like he was having the time of his life. 26 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Now, that gotta be wrong. It was in Seattle against Clippers. It was down 1-2, 1-1. Then got the ball at the top of the key with 2 seconds on the clock. Looked like he might drive, then stepped away, turned and jumped, hit the side hook. Magic who bent under basket waiting for a rebound raise. Quickly ran up the court, grabbed and held. Stoically, stoic Kareem like it was, bro, leaned back and laughed. A missed shot by you was a fast break for them, like Holton said. We played Phoenix Suns. Our first year in Phoenix, they expected us to the playoffs, but an average of 30 points a game. An average of 30 points a game. The time we blew a shot, we made a basket. It was ridiculous. 1980, 81, 82. This is when so-called background basketball teams was athleticism and speed fully triumphed in the NBA. It was different than the game played in the first round. 50s, 60s, dazzle, rock and rolls. Every time they missed, we scored. It was a game as if it was played on public sports in predominantly black neighborhoods like Harlem, Watts, and South Side of Chicago. Since Michigan had been dismissed by many white coaches as unsound, not good team basketball. Varner was smart, carefully about his defense. To the historian of every ever such views were merely evidence of racism. 1928, for example, all black Renaissance 5 defeated the famed all white Celtics, the leading white basketball team at the time, and several other all white applications he wrote that provoked the black athlete. And these victories were not typical, although they simply went unnoticed by the white sports reporting establishment of the day. Gordon Edwards. Bias against playground ball was less about fundamentals than about resentment. Historically, basketball had been a white game invented by James Naismith in 1991 to keep kids occupied during the long New England winters. Black athletes took it, rerented it, then returned it something better and new, usually more profitable. Like they won the championship, beat the Sixers. Magic played a great game. he's supposed to do. So we go to Isaiah Thomas. He was born in 1961. From Chicago. Chicago State Cougars were started in the 1970s. The DePaul Blue Demons were dominant. The Louisville Band was the first NCAA team to break the color line around a storied postseason runs. Northwestern had the best coach, Tex Winter, who introduced the triangle offense to Phil Jackson and the Bulls in the 1980s. So you have powerhouses, high schools like Thornbridge, where Quinn Buckner played, Westinghouse, Simeon Career Academy, where Derek Rose played, St. Joseph Catholic School in the Western Suburbs, where Coach Gene Pinnacle built a basketball factory. Wire, Doc Rivers, Monchis, and Isaiah Thomas all faced each other at Gladys before they met again in the NBA. Let's skip around a little bit. Isaiah Thomas journey went to Indiana. What a check that they were. He was a sophomore. He beat North Carolina. That was led by Sam Perkins and James Worthy. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated on April 6, 1981. He was drafted by the Pistons. He had 17 points, made the All-Star game. Rookie of the Year. He worked hard on North Dakota State, Bird Magic. As I said, I just didn't watch films of role model players. I tried like them. I came to see that Saw player stands out from his teammates. Lee doesn't stand out at all. I adjusted my game by focusing more opportunities for my teammates from that point on with exploring assist drop instead of standing out. I fit in. Isaiah's breakout game came on Halloween night day in Chicago. He left over a dozen tickets at Will Call. All his friends and family were there. He scored 20 points against the Wolves that night and smiled at he left the floor. Praise he was always been his dream to be the all-time best player in Chicago. It was a dream that might have come true if not for an 18-year-old North Carolina's freshman who, at that point, seemed like just another long-shot prospect, Michael Jordan. For basketball players, the first dunk is a baptism of sorts. A central milestone Michael Jordan spent much of his childhood as a short kid had been working his way toward the feet for years. He hung from his pole and his grab to stretch his frame, scored lemon juice, said at the time, which his mother said he would help him grow. He worked at it till he could touch the net, then the rim. He was 14, he was able to get his hand above the basket. But this first real and dunk. Like tuning in today. Yeah, this is about Michael Jordan. He was the fourth player. Obviously, you know his story. It's coming up. won a championship with North Carolina, hit the jumper against Georgetown, and took the league by storm as he came to the league in '84. So played in the Olympic team. That's it, man. Done. Now let's talk about what Jordan did, where he was. Just won 63 points. Michael Jordan was great, but the Bulls did not win the title. Team player, that's what the skeptics instead insisted. I laughed at this, saying that's because he doesn't have a team. That began to change in summer 1987. So we talk about the season on Monday. That's it from when the game was war. NBA's greatest season. Until then, talk to you soon.